Welcome to the latest OpenChain project partner webinar. This time we're going to be hearing from EACG, Enterprise Architecture Consulting Group. An entity based in Germany, they have long been a contributor to the OpenChain ecosystem and naturally are part of our official partner program. I hope you enjoy this webinar and I look forward to meeting you in future events as well. If you have any questions about what you've seen, please send them to our mailing list. We'll make sure to answer them there and make sure that the EACG team is fully aware.
Hello and welcome to the OpenChain partner presentation of EACG. EACG stands for Enterprise Architecture Consulting Group, a German boutique consulting. Today, I want to talk to you about software supply chain security and the open source compliance requirements that have been realized in our EACG TrustSource solution. And my name is Untitled. I am here for you for the next couple of minutes to talk you through the open source compliance solution called TrustSource. TrustSource itself is a software as a service solution. It has a lot of open source components or actually tools that you can use for your compliance process. But before we dive into this, let me first introduce you a little bit to EACG. EACG itself is a company that is a small group founded by senior architects almost 20 years ago. We focused on delivering actually solutions to our customers in the digital transformation segment. So we help them to achieve new business models with the benefit of IT, or making beneficial use of IT, and therefore getting actually advanced business benefits. So, for example, 20 years ago, this was very simple. We were allowing people that have sold stuff through marketing materials then to open up e-commerce platforms. Later on, we were helping banks building transaction platforms. Further on, then we were supporting machinery companies in developing IoT solutions. And in between, we came across a lot of ways to support this. And the most what we did is we actually applied open source solutions. We put together development teams. We developed the architectures and make sure that the teams really delivered on these architectures. So therefore, we are pretty much involved using cloud. That's why we have a cloud security and compliance practice. And also we are involved in software development, secure software development, secure software supply chain management, and also compliance. Especially when you're delivering larger solutions, it's absolutely essential that you're sure what's inside this. And since we deliver complete platforms, it's one of our core assets to know what we are using. So that's why we also have a lot of cool and happy customers. We are pretty much focused on the DACH area, but active actually across all Europe together with our customers. Today, I want to focus on TrustSource. TrustSource itself is the solution that we offer in the open source compliance and secure software area. It's a software as a service solution that has been designed to really bring the whole value of OpenChain to you as a customer. It's starting from all the composition analysis, it's delivering SBOMs, it's supporting you in versioning them, it's getting you all along the chain until the automated design and delivery of open source compliance artifacts. It supports SPDX. It can work with CycloneDX. It has an own vulnerability lake so that you can do additional management of vulnerabilities for older software bill of materials and new ones. You can use this service actually also for free. It's very useful if you want to get understanding of what to monitor to really get the right vulnerability information. Sometimes CPE assignment, you will know, is really a challenge. There are tools and search mechanisms under vl.trustsource.io that you can use to explore the right CPEs or that you need to monitor. But we do not only focus on the software solution or the software development itself, as I mentioned. We also use a lot of infrastructure that is provided by open source components or by open source solutions. That's why we included infrastructure management into our SBOM management. And this finally leads to the automated compliance documentation. The solution itself, the software solution, the SaaS, supports also role models. It keeps track of audit things and so on. Which make it very interesting, especially for larger companies. But probably you are aware of what the OpenChain is doing, or the Linux Foundation is doing in the open source compliance tooling work group. The tooling work group, over the last couple of months, has developed a so-called tool chain capability map. This capability map actually is a collection of all the things that you need to do if you want to automate as much as possible from the software compliance process. And a lot of specialists from different companies like Bosch, Siemens, international one, Ericsson, don't know, American ones, have been discussing about these different capabilities and identified particular capabilities. They are now like a logical model, and the arrows that you see on this diagram, they describe the interfaces between the transfer of what one capability is creating and delivering and transferring it into another capability. So meaning if package rollers are producing some output, this should go via arrow 1 into the package metadata. And this is actually the definition or the idea of the overall concept, that when we are clear about all the capabilities that are required to make open source compliance automatable, then we can deliver these capabilities and we can make sure, on whatever kind of solution we are looking, that the outbound mechanisms are managed on these or using these specified interfaces. And this is actually what we want to cover after the summer break. Currently the draft on this version 1.5.5 is specified and it's out there for comments. And we will create a final version in September and then release this as a public document. You can find all details under https://github.com open source compliance sharing creates value, and all the sessions that have led to there, you will find a link in the repository, are recorded, so you have a real understanding or can get a real understanding of why these capabilities have been identified, how the procedure and where does it come from, and so that you can generate a good understanding of actually why these capabilities seem to be relevant, what they do, and what they deliver. However, why am I talking about this? Because I want to make you understand what TrustSource does. And TrustSource is actually developed to cope with exactly that challenge. We have thought about it long time because we had so many different people in our projects. When we were generating projects, people came with all sorts of background, and they had complete different understanding on how to use open source, how to document what they are using. And to bring this together, we had to provide a solution that had as much automation as possible. So we really sat down, thought about the whole process, and started to develop step by step all capabilities required. And meanwhile, we have a clear understanding or better understanding. And since the tooling chain work group has confirmed their understanding and we have mixed it with our understanding, we came up with a complete picture. And today, TrustSource has already a high coverage of all the required features. We are not present in the package source archiving. Package source archiving is something that is done, for example, for a specific project by Software Heritage. Software Heritage is a foundational project supported by many, many large organizations, and they create an archive of everything that has ever been developed as a software and try to provide this for further research and later review. This is a very valuable asset because if you find something, use a component, a development that you have to retrieve, for example, from a package manager, and you want to make sure that the resources are, the metadata of this is correct, you need to have the access to the sources, which might not necessarily be still available in any public repository. So it's good to have such an archive to look up for the things. Another important part is covered actually the snippet scanning. And snippet scanning is a very specific thing. You go and you really screen and read every line. You look at the structures of the code to identify duplicates that are reused from one component into another component, that really makes sure that there is no transfer of potentially copyright from a source into a target. And if someone has copied a code or the mechanism of a code, then it will be important to understand this. To allow this, it's a specific analysis required. You need to have understanding of syntax trees. You need to build tokenization mechanisms that use these syntax trees to make comparisons on that. And then you still need to verify details, what has been the original source and so on and so forth. So a very specific thing. ScanOSS is doing that, and they are doing it pretty well. They are fast in it, and that's why we tend to integrate with them instead of providing a solution for that. Finally, there's also binary scanning. Binary scanning is different from containers and sources because binaries can consist or are on the one hand side they are platform specific or maybe platform specific. Then they are already built. It's not all in there what has been required to build it, and so on and so forth. So the decoding mechanism is very specific, and sometimes you need to go the way to build it by yourself, reusing parameters. Sometimes you need to just understand what the binary is, depending on whatever you have available. However, very specific thing. It's something that we can do on our EACG service side. So as a consulting job, have an agreement with you. But we did not yet integrate it into our solution. However, what's always possible, the solution can import all kind of SPDX and CycloneDX structures. So whenever you have someone doing this for you, this sort of analysis, you can import it and then have it included into your sphere of compliance management. And just to make the ball round, here on the left-hand side, you see sort of inbound capabilities. So understanding what has been done before someone has committed something, what's inside, what is known about it, what is actually the proficiency, the correct provenance that are behind these packages, what is the original code. This all goes into the metadata of particular components, and then this needs to be combined with case data. What are you doing with this? Where is it used for? What is your business model? And so on and so forth. All this needs to be captured to make a case data analysis. This case data analysis makes use of particular information that's coming from license repositories. For example, understanding what is an LGPL and compare it to an Apache or an MIT. What are the obligations that come with each in these particular circumstances? All this is required to then go and create the compliance artifacts or create then an approval flow which allows you to understand or decide on whether this is complete enough for publication. This, in a nutshell, is pretty much what the application does. To give you a bit understanding how it looks like, this is, for example, the result of an analysis which has been put on top an SBOM. So whatever kind of SBOM comes in, it will be assessed. It will be compared with the situation that it will be used for. For example, will it be software as a service? Will it be part of an appliance? Is it charged money for support or is it charged money for license? How will it be sold? And under these circumstances, the legal obligations will be determined and you receive all obligations as kind of tasks that you need to resolve. And as long as tasks are there, the project won't be green and you need to do something. So it's a very, very simple traffic light analogy that is used to help you and help someone who has no clue of actually open source compliance to understand that he has to do something because it's not green, so he cannot go on. Your CI/CD solution can query this and ask, hey, can I go on with deployment? Oh no, there's something red. I need to stop here. And this is actually the whole metaphor that is used across the whole analysis path or the whole work across this tooling. In this case, you see there's a lot of legal things because there are little obligations. We have some automation behind. For example, in this case, you see there's the retain copyright notice and the provide a copy of the license text requirements, and with a couple of automations. For example, the resolve via notice file. Then the tool is creating the stubs for the notice file, putting in all information that's coming from the from this component repository, and will then resolve whatever can be resolved in an automated way. And this is a way how you can work. Someone without much of experience can walk and work through the compliance work. So it's not necessary that you have all work done in open source in OSPO, but you can distribute it into the development teams and just focus on actually compliance reports. So the amount of people that you require for your OSPO will be reduced. Such a compliance report can be done using or initiate an approval request. It will give a complete overview of the things that are done or have been done or are required. Here you see, for example, some KPIs. You see how many actions have to be resolved, how many components are in this particular module that is seeking an approval. You also see in the very first step that some of the obligations are not really resolved and that there are some vulnerabilities left. In this case, you probably would want to know more about the vulnerabilities. Click on the vulnerability link and then see that there are 9 unique vulnerabilities. One of them has been muted because they accept the risk. Others are not muted or touched. So probably you want to jump into the project, into this particular thing, to see what is the reason, what is the problem that is caused here, and probably decide it's worth stopping the project due to that or not. The same you can do on the license side. You get a summary of the requirements of the project. What is the commercial model? What is the distribution model? What are the IP requirements? Typically, it's worth to sit down together with the team before they start their work, make sure they pick the right things. It's even possible to define templates for particular solutions so that they can apply them automatically. However, all this reduces the amount of work and the amount of knowledge that is required in the organization to really make sure that you receive sound and proper solutions. But we're doing it quite for a while. So we also identified a couple of edge cases that this solution can help you with. For example, having devices that don't have a display. So you can generate a QR code with a unique key, and so that put this on the device to allow actually SBOM or notice file display in a third-party device as a public URL, for example. We support updates on vulnerabilities on older releases. So if you have software in the field, you keep these approved versions, and the vulnerability alerts will arrive at the current project managers. We look at, actually, we have this kind of portfolio view. Yeah? You can see how many problems I have on the legal side, on the age side. We're tracking versions. So if people have old versions, they also run into a definable, after a threshold, they run into a problem. And you can query all this. There are dashboards, you see the whole project or landscape, you can see which one are red, drill down up to the component that is critical. And also you can search the portfolio for particular components. Look at the log4j thing. That's something that you get more or less for free, which is pushing your SBOMs here. Finally, there's also tools available to support the verification of effective licenses. For example, you just need to push a repo URL to DeepScan service, and it will assess all the contents. It will try to identify whatever is used inside and make references to already known appearances, or also to all sort of copyrights, collect this stuff, will identify additional licenses that are triggered. So this is actually all available as under particular solution. You can even use this part as a CLI version. It's nice. It can also produce CycloneDX exports. So very, very cool tool. Highly recommend to put this. It's even multi-threading capable so you can really scan fast even complex and large repositories. And finally, I already mentioned that we see or understood that solutions are not only from software that you develop, so that there are components in there. For example, look at Mongo. Yeah? We are using Mongo database in the background. And then we have in all our source code, you find PyMongo or whatever corresponding thing for JavaScript that Java is. Yeah. But PyMongo itself might be nice for vulnerability tracking. But for compliance purposes, if we would deliver this solution as a Docker solution, we would also have to ship Mongo. And shipping Mongo is quite different, and it leads to different requirements concerning the compliance. So we would have to expose this. We would say this is either it's an additional need, so please install it by yourself, or somehow treat it. And this is typically not part of SBOMs. So what we provide a canvas where you can make your compliance declarations for. And this canvas can include infrastructure elements. Infrastructure elements are then middleware things, complex solutions that you add where you do not really start programming in. And this is handled as if it would be components. And therefore, we can track vulnerabilities on this level. We can help your projects to be safe on that side, but we also can make the compliance declarations on these infrastructure components. This gives you a bit more complete understanding. And finally, what we also decided as a very, very important part, sometimes you need to make decisions. For example, in this case, here you see there is a solution, and this has a multi-license case. And this multi-license case requires you to make a decision. And to allow this, we have functionality available for someone who is not really understanding or may not necessarily understand the impacts of making such a choice, but he can use the tooling. And the tooling will help him to understand what is the impact that you choose, and if he selects, then this will be documented. You will see who has made which kind of selection and can follow up with this. This is also part then later on in the compliance report, so that you as a compliance manager will always see if such decisions have been taken that really reduce or the obligation load on a particular project. Well, this all said, we are in there for quite a while, and we understood that having a cool tool is really something nice, but a fool with a tool is still a fool, and so it requires more to really get into successful open source governance. As you as an OpenChain member most likely have read the specification and know that, so there's more about it. It requires structure. For example, something like an OS board or some other kind of responsible body that is taking care. And also it requires some procedures and processes to ensure that the things arrive or are delivered. And the body typically takes also care for these procedures. But however, writing them down in a sort of an open source policy is not only just requirement for the OpenChain certification, but it's actually an essential thing to get your open source governance through the door in even large organization. So now we have 3 pillars, which is open source board, open source policy, and open source tool. But it's not there yet. So typically we also require an open source transformation. And this is where EACG comes in. We're supporting our customers in really getting the things right, getting them done. That's an essential thing. We are using specific transformation method that has been developed for this, and already have a couple of even large organizations where we were able to introduce TrustSource, but not only TrustSource, also open source governance, so meaning without TrustSource. When we are talking open source policy, we typically distinguish 4 different areas. These 4 different areas are the inbound side, so what is done when we take something in and start working with it. Whether it's purchased, it will have an impact on purchase departments. It will have an impact on developer work. What are we doing by ourselves? It's internal. So how do we handle this stuff? It must not necessarily only be open source. It could also be third-party components. There's different handling. For example, in the medical industry, they require specific handling of such components as well. How do we resolve the obligations? What do we do with the vulnerabilities and all this stuff? Yeah, what's all in there? How do we archive the code? How much can we automate in these procedures? Where's the hook that we make sure that the things are done? How do we resource the stuff? And what do we do outbound? Outbound is a very important thing, not only for the part of delivering the artifacts and giving all the compliance, which is documentation to your customers or to whomever is out there, but also when you give code back, when you return code, you need to make sure that you have the right settings in the contracts with your employees, you have the right rules or probably gateways that are required to complete. And finally, also inquiry is an important part. Inquiry, so someone, not from your organization, but someone is actually having a question and they want to reach you, or they send you a bad letter. Oh, you're doing bad things. You're using my component, and they send it to some, don't know, Ecuadorian facility that's operated under your name, and it belongs to your conglomerate. You must make sure that these guys understand what they are receiving there, because it's an official complaint, and probably there's a period attached to it. And if you do not really receive this or treat it in a proper way, then it might appear that some problems arise. So having a good inquiry procedure is also an important thing, what we think should be part of an open source policy. So setting up such a open source policy is actually also part of the consulting service that you can engage EACG for. Finally, meanwhile, we also have a lot of online trainings where we have classroom trainings, and these classroom trainings actually went on into online services where we have then provided small little pieces so that people can do online self-training in their own pace. Has a lot of questionnaires attached to it, different types, partly for things that are inside the tool, sometimes particular on roles. So it's a growing archive of online trainings that we are providing. And actually, I could go on telling you all this, but I feel that I already had spent my time. So probably it's a good idea to reach out in case you have questions. I would be happy to help every organization to really get this managed. And we are absolutely keen and can reach out to us by phone, by mail, or if you have specific questions, we can also arrange an appointment that we discuss these questions under HTTPS www.eacg.de/Termine, which is a German word for appointments. You can always find a place to arrange an appointment with me and put in your agenda. And we have also a group of tools available that we offer to the community. Just look at https://github.com/TrustSource. There you will find, especially for example, the DeepScan tooling, but also some other things that are useful in the compliance context. And finally, you also can make use of our free services. We have this TrustSource vulnerability lake that really helps you to understand what you have to look for to keep track of vulnerabilities that might occur in your environment. You can even register there with a GitHub account and show actually, then record some of the components that you're using and get the vulnerability alerts then for these without further identifying you. And TrustSource DeepScan, that's a public repository scanner. It's the same that you use when you are inside the application. But it's free, and you cannot take out the results. So you will get the results displayed, but you cannot download them. So to download them, you should use the DeepScan version that's on GitHub and operated by yourself. However, as you see, there's a lot of things on this open source compliance side or open source security side. Feel free to reach out. We would be happy to hear from you. And thank you for your attention.